All right, part two. Okay, so remember I said in the last one that I said I would never do wedding videos. Well, I was wrong. So I'd been doing short films and experimental stuff and whatnot, and just having kind of fun with that. I got my first camera, kind of tricked my parents into buying me a camera, and so I had this little Sharp Handycam type thing with mini DV that used FireWire to connect the computer. It was so cool. And I was just shooting stuff all the time. Like we go Christmas to the families, and I shot the whole thing. Like I was in the corner with a tripod recording Christmas. Like, why do we need Christmas recorded? I don't know. We're outside and I'm following my little cousin who's like 5 years old around, doing little like up angles, just practicing my cinematography, practicing storytelling. I go like my sister's volleyball game, and I'd go outside and I'd shoot around. Like I was like, oh, I'll do a challenge where I'm trying to shoot myself like I'm a spy sneaking around this building, which I'm sure made security super comfortable. And I was just practicing everything, right? So then, you can't do this kind of stuff for that long before you start to get a reputation. In high school, I got a subscription to Videomaker magazine, and I literally would go to school. So now instead of drawing, I'm reading Videomaker magazine. I always have it rolled up. I'm walking around with it at lunch breaks. I'm reading it. They did a 2-bell schedule that year at our school. And so like I got on a different lunch break than all my friends, because we used to all sit around and hang out and talk and whatnot. And so I remember my senior year? One of them, I got on a different lunch schedule than them. So I just sit and read my Videomaker magazine. And in class, I'm in the back. I'm just reading my magazine. You get to that part of the year where they're just showing movies. I'm like, I don't need to be entertained by you. And so I just sit and read my magazine and all the time, right? So I get big into it. So then the word gets out around the family, like, hey, Jared does this video stuff all the time. So then we have a relative, and I actually don't know how. Well, I think it's like one of my mom's cousins or something, or I don't know. We have a relative who her daughter's getting married and asks if I would record the wedding. I'm like, no. And I remember being like, no, I'm not doing that. I'll never do that. Like, that sounds super stressful. It doesn't sound like fun. And I won't do it. So my mom is like, hey, do this as a favor for me. And I'm like, well, crap. So I had to do it. So I'll back up a little bit and say at this point, I'd taken over the media department. I'm trying to think of the timelines, but I'd taken over the media department at our church. So I did have 2 cameras, and I'd ordered a new camera, which didn't come in time. But so I did have 2 cameras. I think one was like a Hi8 camera, and one was my DV camera. So I didn't like the other camera very much. And I had taken that's a whole nother story of how I got, as a high schooler, a junior in high school, that our pastor was like, hey, take over this entire department and run the media department and air our services on local cable. And so I'm producing a cable show, a show that's literally going live on air, not live, I'd edit it, and literally going on air once a week, for our local town, as a junior in high school. So anyways, I have these 2 cameras. The one I inherited from taking over this, at the time, tiny little media, it was like a tripod and a camera and some tapes, is really all I inherited as taking this thing over. And then I had my camera, and so like, okay, fine, I'll do this wedding. I had my girlfriend at the time do the other camera, and we shot this wedding, and I did it as a favor for my mom. And then when it was done, I gave it to the lady on a VHS. She was so thankful, she tipped me $300. And I was like, say what? $300? I was like, that wasn't that hard for $300. Because at this point, see, I'm now no longer in high school saying I'd never do that. I'm working now. So I'm like, $300, like that's a lot less work than if I had gone and done that working at a job. So, that was pretty exciting, right? So then some time goes on. I'm taking other projects for like other people. Like my English teacher, my senior year, we did a video, and it was really good. Actually, there's a story that where we actually saved the kid from having to do summer school because he was failing English and he's gonna have to do summer school. He's a senior, so he wasn't gonna get a graduate. He's gonna have to do summer school that year just to get that English class, and then he would like, okay, here at the end of the summer, here's your diploma type thing. And we did so well. We got so much extra credit on this Canterbury Tales video that we did that he actually ended up graduating with a D- instead of an F, and didn't have to do summer school. So boom, changing lives with filmmaking already. So then my English teacher hires me and another friend to record her 50th birthday party. So we go down to the steakhouse, we get a nice steak dinner, record it, edit it. That was actually a nightmare. My equipment wasn't working. So I learned like get good equipment. Those years before I could start doing that. And made an easy $100 on that for shooting her. Well, it wasn't easy because of all the problems, but if it wasn't for that, if I'd had a decent computer that wasn't breaking down, it would have been easy. So I'd been doing projects like that, little paid things here and there, because again, just people, have camera will work, type thing. And people would just kind of like, hey, I'll give you such and such to do. I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. So then like a year or so goes by. I'm now like out of high school. Her next daughter gets married and she asked me to do it again. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I do it. And this time now I think I have my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, I think is helping me on this one. Got married right out of high school. Because I ended up doing 3 weddings, I think, for this lady, 3 daughters. The second one, I can't remember if I charged her or not, but I think I ended up getting like $400. I think I just said I'll do it again, knowing she's going to pay me something. The second one, she gave me $400 instead of $300. And then by the time her third daughter was getting married, I think I actually charged her. And I think I charged her $500. And then I started doing weddings for $700. And I started a video. I created Nate Ideas. My middle name is Nathaniel, so it's Jared Nathaniel. And the year that I went to the film school, I went by my middle name. And you say your name is Nathaniel, everyone calls you Nate. So I thought Nate Ideas, when I was trying to think of a business name, was cool because it was like a play on neat ideas. I don't know why I thought that was so cool, but I don't know. I still like it, apparently. I named my podcast Nate Ideas. So my very first official company, well, I guess official because I made money off of it. So my first technical company was BACC, Born Again Christian Comics, that Christian comic book company that I never actually went anywhere. And then I had Nate Ideas, and I did make money off that. It was Nate Ideas Video Productions and Services. And I created a logo, I created a letterhead, I created business cards, I did this whole thing, and I just started doing a ton of work. And then I had made some like mentor type relationships with some guys in town who did video stuff, and they would give me any of the projects that they either didn't want to do, couldn't pay enough for them to do, or they were too busy. And so I had a few. I had let's see. All I can think of is his last name is Cusack. He's like a cousin to John Cusack. Tom Cusack is what it was. And yes, him and John Cusack are related. So he had worked for Comcast, and then he had a video production company. So like he kind of was like my first mentor. I made friends with these photographers in town. It was an older couple, and it was Sage Cheese Photography. And normally videographers and photographers hate each other. And I made friends with them, and they referred me a bunch of work because they would get, anytime a bride would be like, hey, do you know anyone who does, or do you do video stuff? And they'd say no, but we know a guy who does, because they like working with me because I wasn't trying to fight them. Well, because I was young, I didn't know that I was supposed to be fighting with them and trying to get the better spots and all that. And so they liked working with me because I didn't get in their way and I was decent to work with. So they would refer me, and I got quite a bit of business from them. I got some from my buddy Tom, who was mentor buddy. And then he eventually went back to working at Comcast, but he then connected me with a guy named Larry Papaluzio. And I did a bunch of every 15 minutes work with him. And if you don't know, every 15 minutes is like this like anti-drunk driving thing they do at schools in California, where they go in and they basically simulate a crash, and every 15 minutes of a day, a Grim Reaper and a sheriff comes in and pulls a kid out, and they're like dead, and and it's like this very shocking thing. Then at some point they go out on the football field, and there's like a simulated car accident. They have actual crashed cars. One kid gets arrested because he was a drunk driver. Most of the kids end up getting taken away. They're dead. They actually had like a hearse come in and take them away. They have an ambulance take a kid away, some of the kids away who are hurt. They have an actual helicopter, a Metaflight comes and lands and Metaflights a kid away. They would take the parent, they'd notify the parents would go to the morgue, and their kids are there pretending to be dead. And the parents, of course, it doesn't matter that it's pretend. They break down and freak out and crying. And this whole thing, we record this whole thing, edit it together, and the very next day would turn around the actual final thing. And so he hired me as a cameraman for that. And so I just started getting all this work, right? And then I started doing weddings because that was the easiest thing to do. There wasn't a ton of corporate work. It was Merced, was, California. It wasn't, so there was some, but these two guys had most of it, right? These two guys who were my mentors. So I'd get their scraps basically. And then I was doing weddings, and they would do weddings, but they're doing weddings like their base package was, I don't think Tom did weddings. I think he just did corporate. Larry did weddings, but like they were like $2,300 to $5,000. And so I came in, I started doing weddings at $700, and I basically owned the market for good video production cheap. So there was a couple guys who were like, yeah, I got a camera. I've done I'll do, and they weren't even trying to market themselves that much. They're like, oh yeah, I'll do your wedding, and for a couple hundred, like $300 or whatever. And I did my cousin's wedding, and so it'll be cool. I was the only guy who was like marketing myself as a professional, but with lower rates. And so I was coming in at $700. I owned that entire market basically. And then there was the guys above me. And yeah, I was growing my company, and it ended up leading to me getting a job because, again, I kept attaching myself to these guys, these mentors. And one of them was through our ROP program, which is Regional Occupation Program. It's basically like, let's train the kids who are never going to make it, like they're not going to college, and put them in some sort of trade school type thing, teach them skills. They went into like nursing, which obviously there's college for that, so it's not exactly that. They're like nursing and construction were like their two big ones, and it was kind of like a poor man's version of CART that I went to. And I'd gone through the animation program, which had gotten me connected with these guys who ran METV, which is also where we broadcasted our church services through. So I knew these guys from a couple different connections, and they would hire me, and I'd go out and do football games with them. Like I was the TD, the technical director. And I was the guy that actually did it. So when the director is saying, cut to camera 1, cut to camera 2, bring up these graphics, I was the one that was doing all that. And, so yeah, I'd known them. And so a full-time position came open, which in one of the other videos I've done on the vlog, I talked about like the marketing course, and then how that ended up leading to all these $3,000 of weddings over a couple years, and then a job. Well, that was this job. So I ended up getting this job, and I ended up getting recommended for it. So a bunch of people go for it. I'm the only one who's as young as I am. But I ended up getting it because of the recommendation of Sean and Tim, the two guys who run METV. They're like, no, we know this kid. He's a good kid. You should hire him. And the fact of like most of the other guys who were older and had more experience, I don't know how hard they fought for it, because it wasn't a super high paying job. Like it was like $12 an hour, which was a ton to me because minimum wage was like $6.75. So I'm now making $12 an hour. That was amazing to me. But these are guys that, like, if they're in the industry, they're making a TV station, $35, $45 an hour. So I go against a couple people with the recommendation and everything. I end up getting it, even though I'm like 19, 20 years old, something like that. But because of my experience and my portfolio and their recommendation, I end up getting it, and my enthusiasm probably. And then I start working for, what was the name? ROP was one of the things they did, but it was CA Careers and Alternative Education was a department. So there was the school superintendent, and then there was a bunch of assistant superintendents. And then I worked for May Preeny, who was an assistant superintendent, and she ran Careers and Alternative Education. And one of the things that they did was ROP and stuff like that. So I'm now over in the Wolf building, which is where like the graphics class and the networking and computer class and all this stuff are. I'm actually in the back of the animation class. So this is the same animation class I took my freshman year in high school. And I took it, a few times later on too. But I took, starting freshman year of high school, same teacher. Now his class had been moved. It was from one part of the campus to the other, and it was now in the Wolf Center, not building, center. And we're in building whatever. So like you walk in, and the majority of the building is the animation department, and in the back is my department. And it was two guys. I'm gonna back up here for a second. I had taken, I did the year of CART, but then I came and did this ROP thing because the commuting got to be too much. And so my senior year, I just wanted to go back to my normal school. Sorry, I was like a sheriff, and so like always catches my eye. And I'd taken the media productions class, and we had like a building, like the building was split, and like we had the one, like the bigger room, and then our animation class. So like I first started going to that before the video class. My freshman year, I was taking the animation class, and then we shared like the middle part. And then my senior year, I came back and I took, so I was like moved from freshman year. I was on one side of the building doing animation. My senior year, now I'm on the other side of the building doing their media productions class. And that class was great. We had a kind of an idiot teacher, but it was great because we just got handed a bunch of equipment. And me and a friend of mine, Josh Trigg, we just got to do whatever we wanted to do, which is also where I met like one of my best friends, Juan, and he was the year before, but I'd met up with him later. We did video production stuff. So yeah, that was a ton of fun. We did a bunch of stuff there. And then at this point now, that class got shut down, but my teacher, when they shut the class down, there was a teacher who I kind of said was kind of, woo. And then she got fired, but then the assistant teacher, Todd McElrath, who was awesome, he ended up, him and one of the students who had long graduated had gotten hired for this position. It was these two guys, and they shot and edited all this stuff. And I went by and visited them and stuff like that. And they finally got moved over to this other building. And then they let go of the one guy, Todd. It was just the student. And then when the student quit, they needed to hire someone. That's when I came in and took that position over. I worked there for a year and a half. It was 2006 to 2008. And then they shut that whole department down. They had like a $2 million budget cut. And so they got rid of like 16 of us. And I was one of them. So yeah, when I got that job, now here's a critical mistake, in my opinion, looking back, something, I can't say I wish I did it differently because it would have landed me in a different place in life now. And I wouldn't want to risk anything to risk like jeopardize having my three kids that I currently have, or even the great position we're in now. But with that aside, something that I would have done differently if I could is I was working at Hollywood Video, and I was doing my video production business on the side. So I was making money at Hollywood Video. My boss was also my film buddy, Josh Trigg, and we went to the school together, ROP class together, and we had Thursdays off. We did film day, blah, blah, blah. I get this job, and I was honestly tired of trying to grow this business. And I was towards the end, I was really starting to stress with the weddings. Like I'd get a wedding, and starting like a couple weeks before, I would have nightmares every night about like getting to the wedding like an hour and a half out of town, and then not having tapes, or all my batteries are dead. And it started like really stressing me out. And so when I got this job, this full-time media production job, I let it go. And I kind of regret that. I remember still getting calls. I did some freelance stuff. Like I'd get recommendations for like some freelance jobs. I'd do that. But like I let go, like I stopped doing the wedding stuff. I really just stopped marketing and all that kind of stuff. And I stopped working at Hollywood Video. One thing, like if I could do it again, I would have kept that Hollywood Video job, and I would have kept marketing my business. And then that way, when a year and a half later, I could have started doing, like, I was right to the point where I was going to go from $700 a wedding to $900 a wedding. I should have honestly just kept going. And then after I got a couple, just kept raising my prices. So maybe I'm only doing a couple weddings a year, but I'm still keeping that going. And then when I ended up getting laid off because they shut down that whole department, I would have still had my Hollywood Video job, which I was able to go back and get and actually come in higher as a manager now. But then I would have been able to just be like, okay, I'm just going to ramp up this business thing. I'm going to take as many hours at Hollywood Video as I can. But it's just as hard for me at the time because I was making twice as much. I'm making almost $13 an hour as the video production job to go sit in a chair behind a computer and just edit and watch videos and just live in the dream. And then to go to Hollywood Video and work for, like, at that point, I think I was like at $7.25 an hour. So I was like, but anyways, kept doing that. And then when I got let go, just using like all my extra, okay, give me as many hours as I can. And then all my free time, I would have just put into like growing my business, which at this point would have still been growing because I would have still been doing stuff and I would have had a higher price point. So then I could be like, yeah, I'm doing weddings at like $1,100 or whatever is my base price. And I could have just ramped that up. I think it would put me in a much different place today. And if I could do that and guarantee I still had my 3 kids, I would totally go back and redo that. So yeah, I think that kind of concludes that portion. Let me kind of wrap this up neatly. So I had this video production business. I got the job at the county. I also let go doing the media stuff at the church. Like, I kind of got a big head, to be honest. I let all this other stuff go. And so I got the job at the county. I did that for 1.5 years. Then I got let go from that. That kind of ties in this, the couple of videos, which I'll put in the sequence of this story. But I did a couple of videos about learning the marketing stuff, for my video production business. That would have happened during this, like around this time when I was doing all this video stuff, and then would have stopped when I got this job. And that's when I stopped the marketing stuff. So I stopped doing the direct response stuff. I stopped the membership. I stopped learning all this kind of stuff, and got this job, and kind of let all that go. And I honestly thought at the time, like, oh, I'm never going to have to worry about this again. I thought I had a career, and I remember actually going in and out, after getting the job and being like, this is like a career. Like, I could literally do this. Like, this is the type of job I could do for the rest of my life and just keep, because I would have just kept getting raises every year. I was just getting raises. So I started off at like $12.05 or $12.09 an hour. And then like 1.5 years later, I'm like working towards $14 an hour. I'm like, if I keep doing this, that's, one day, like 10 years from now, I'm gonna be making like $25 an hour, which seemed amazing at the time to me. I'm going to have like full benefits, life, like medical. I had a union. I had all this kind of stuff. I'm like, plus other things could open up and I could like even fast track that. So if I get over on the other side in the EMA-TV section, I'll be making even more quicker. And those guys are still there banging it out and doing it. So that would have worked if, there were positions that came up. I could have, there was a guy, Adam Pennycuff. He actually ended up leaving to Hollywood. I could have taken his job and gotten a big promotion. It would have worked if it had worked. So it wasn't like I was totally wrong. And at that point, I lost all desire, all interest in trying to do anything entrepreneurial. And it was a couple years before I kind of got back into doing some business stuff. I kind of went through like a dark season, and it wasn't until I started like getting into like the startup phase of my life where I kind of got pulled back into that a little bit. So in the next video, I'll talk about that kind of like startup obsession or interest, I should say, and how that kind of pulled me back into like the idea of working for myself and getting a business again.